Right now 721 attendees already joined.
Oh, that's good.
Bari ma'am, when you are after Dr. Anand finishes speaking, you ask me, then I'll stop sharing this banner slide.
Okay.
Because till the time
we are introducing the next person by the speaker.
Yes.
नहीं आ रहा बीच में.
नहीं, आप सिर्फ डॉक्टर बरी को हैंड ओवर कर देंगे.
Okay, after me, who's there? I just
Sumit,
need
Dr. Sumit.
Dr. Sumit only, na?
Dr. Sumit hands over to me, and then I hand over to Dr. Rakesh.
Okay.
And then Dr. Rakesh opens it for discussion.
Right.
वो तो फिर मैं आ जाऊंगा.
So I'm just showing the learned video.
Yeah, sure.
You can just wait. If there are already about 50-100 people, then show. Otherwise,
there are around 77.
फिर दिखा दो. Then fine. Then you can show.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir, I need to stop Dr. Gupta's sharing.
Yeah,
Thank
I've
you,
done
sir.
that.
Thank
I've
you,
done
sir.
that.
Thank you, sir.
Ayan, you can show the that thing again, no?
Yes, sir. मेरा स्क्रीन चला गया.
So, do we have a number on which we start, or we are happy with 100? Or right now there are about 100 coders.
We can wait for 5 minutes, maybe.
107, but it's 100 coders if you take the 5 of us out.
How many registered?
200 something registered.
Okay, so we'll wait for some time.
107 attendees are there.
113 always.
109, quickly. Maybe
115 coming up.
it's quickly rising, yeah. So, which is just 4-1, so we can wait for a minute or so, definitely.
Just to clarify from Joyita, this question and answer box is different from the chat box because somebody is raising their hand over there in the question and answer.
Sir, actually Q&A box is only for questions and answers, and chat box is for all the comments and everything. It's better to write all the questions at the Q&A box. You can just type your answer if needed. You don't have
So Dr. Anand, I think
Yeah,
you need to tell them that.
Question which we want to be discussed in the discussion should be sent to Q&A.
Yes, and not on chat.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm just writing it down in the chat box also so that I can follow.
Because right now that Q&A says just hello, which could be a chat box, not necessarily.
Which he is mistaking it as a chat box.
Yeah. So we just wait for a minute or so. It's already 122, so maybe we hit close to 150.
Yeah, it's gone up to 128, 129 now. Dr. Anand, so you'll have to keep checking that question and answer box.
Yeah, I will do that. No problem. So I think let us start. I think we should not delay. So welcome everybody. I'm very happy that all of you have joined us today. On behalf of my team, MINErVA, many of you are seeing on screen, I welcome all of you to the first webinar of MINErVA. So we are very thankful that you chose to join MINErVA and contribute to this national cause of estimating mortality and cause of death due to various diseases in India. You know, this is the best data set for cause of death in the country, and as a public health person, perhaps this is one of the most important piece of information that should be generated in any country, and you should be proud that you are contributing to this important national cause. And this MINErVA network would be incomplete without you. You are the core of the whole exercise. The whole edifice of the building that we have built is on your shoulders. And you have till now, and we will share the results of the work that you have done shortly. My team members will present the progress that we have made. But we have definitely, the platform is up and running, and it is running very smoothly, except there are always some minor problems that we keep getting. That's part of any technology platform that is created. But apart from that, we are happy that the platform is functioning and also doing reasonably well. And when I say reasonably well, it means that we can always do better. And that is always, that's a good motto, that we can always improve. And today's our focus would be on how we can improve and do better than what we are doing. And there are two issues that we will be discussing repeatedly. Two themes that will come up in the presentations. One is the speed or amount of work that we are doing. And we are not doing, we have managed to finish almost 2015 and 2016. So we are doing from speed point of view, we are not doing bad. We're doing quite good. If you expand the base further, we can be faster. The second important issue is the quality, because quality decides how correctly we are ascertaining the cause of death, and that's, as I said, that is the most important thing. Our data results in the data being used for national planning and estimating cause of death due to different diseases like tuberculosis or heart disease. So it is very important that we ensure that our data has high quality and is respected globally for that purpose. And today we'll discuss on quality issues and see how we can improve the quality further. My team we have had multiple discussions within my team, and we have tried to see how we can improve quality, and we'll share our thoughts with you and engage with you on how to improve quality. You are also our brand ambassadors. You should be spreading the word around about the MINErVA network in your connections, maybe your social media, and also try to enroll more coders, because as I said, higher speed is always welcome. And in a way, speed and quality are opposite of each other. If I try to do too many things, the quality will suffer. Therefore, we want to have a sufficient coder base that we can focus more on quality and not worry about speed. The COVID has initially when we established MINErVA, there was never a plan for us to directly engage with coders. In our initial thinking, at least, which now appears to be wrong, we were engaging with coders only through our network partners and our medical colleges in each of the state. But COVID made us think, especially when we started using the technology and internet platforms, then why do we need a middleman? Why can't we directly engage with coders? That thought came, and we thought that it might be good for us to start engaging with coders directly as well. This does not preclude the role of network partners in engaging with their coders. That has their own advantage. It's a much smaller group. You can have more one-to-one interaction. So this just supplements the activities that our partners are doing at their own state level. So we started this, and based on success of this, we hope to continue this exercise, but we will ask you for your feedback at the end, and we'll decide accordingly. One thing I know most of you are not or concerned about is the payment for the coding. Unfortunately, the MOU with RGI is still not done. It is still with their finance division. I had a chat with the RGI 2 weeks back, with the DDG last week. They all are saying that we'll expedite, but unfortunately it's not happening that fast. And without that, we are unable to pay the coders for the work that you've already done. But we hope that this will be sorted out in October, and we should be able to release your funds in November. That's we hope, and reasonably confident that it will happen. So that's from my side. Before we go to the webinar and hand over the mic to Dr. Bari, just few this thing. First is that there are two things in your screen. One is question and answer, and one is chat. Use chat to say hello and mark your attendance or those kind of a thing. But use question and answer to really ask questions related to the sessions and the MINErVA. These questions could be taken up in the end when we are going to have an open discussions. I would be monitoring the Q&A, and I would go through all the Q&As and decide which questions will be taken up in that discussions, so that we have a ready-made set of questions which will be picked up from Q&A. Similarly, I'm sure many of you would be now well experienced with these kind of platforms. Mute yourself, accept the speaker, and also it might be good if you switch off your video at this stage. So that's all from my side. Now let's get into discussing MINErVA, and to introduce the MINErVA and what we have done, I request Dr. Bari Delane to make her presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Anand. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So let me start the webinar by telling you what we have done so far. And as Dr. Anand said, that this is our first interaction with the coders directly. So we are very happy to have this opportunity, though it's virtual, but it's always good to have direct interaction with the people who are the main, the main persons who are running and keeping our MINErVA running through your active participation. So can you see my screen?
Yes, Barry, we can see.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so let me just start from the beginning. How did we start and when did we start and where are we now? This is just in a snapshot, the milestones in the evolution of MINErVA. We had started with humble beginnings on March 7, 2017, where we AIMS had signed an MOU with the Office of the Registrar General of India, where we took over this huge responsibility of conducting this mortality surveillance and assigning the causes of death, as you know, after the million death study completed its contract. So since then, we have come a long way. And after we signed the MOU, where we first decided that the whole system had to be designed or had to be established from scratch, because we did not get anything from our predecessors. And also we wanted to, the government was very clear that they wanted the whole system to be developed in-house. It is purely developed within our country. So we had gathered a team of faculty members from our department. Then we had IT experts. And so the first thing was developing the website. And we launched the website on November 2017, which also coincided with the first network partner meeting and the TAG meeting, the Technical Advisory Group meeting. So at that point of time, we had engaged 17 network partners. And after that, we had planned a series of activities which involved expanding the coders. And then we carried out training programs. And at the same time, developing a coding platform. So all these activities were going on simultaneously. And by the end of 1 year, the coding platform was developed and it was fully functional. And that again, it coincided with the second network and TAG meeting, which was in November 2018. And the VA coding commenced in November 2018. And subsequently, there was a lot of work which needed to be done in terms of training the workers or the supervisors who are actually doing the coding. So we did a lot of work in many fronts. And then we realized that it's not enough to have a coding system unless you have a proper VA, unless the VA forms are being filled properly. So the entire system had to be relooked. So we started looking at the other issues and trying to delay reduce the delays which was occurring in the cause of death, the whole mortality surveillance system. So then in November 2019, we had a third TAG meeting last year. And we had presented the results of the interim results of the VA coding. Then after that, we presented the results of of the coding that were done by us and compared it with the previous system that is through the million death study. And we presented that to the RGI, and where they had approved an extension for us for another 5 years. So in the span of 3 years, quite a lot of things had been accomplished. And thanks to coders, to all of you and our team here, we have been able to do it successfully and smoothly. And here we are in October 2020, where we have coded for about 75,000 VA forms. And 2015 has been completed, and we still have a few forms of 2016. And so here we are now. This is where we are right now. So now we have a number of about 421 coders registered with us so far. And as you can see that we have coders from all over the country. And as far as network partners are concerned, we started with 16 partners, partner institutions in 2017. And in 2018, we increased to 24. And in 2019, so far, right now, we have 25 partner institutions with us. So the purpose is to build capacity for coding and as well as for mortality surveillance in the country by involving institutions and not individuals. But we do have certain issues that we want to raise and bring in front of you today. That is, as you can see, that we have a number of languages that the forms are being filled in. Though Hindi and English are not a problem, but we do have some regional languages which we really require more coders to be enrolled, because if you can see that the certain languages like Oriya, Malayalam, then Kannada, Tamil, Manipuri, Khasi, these particularly we've been repeatedly telling in our network meetings also that we really need more coders to come in, particularly from these languages, because we need 4 coders, minimum of 4 coders for each language. So maybe some of you will say that how did you finish coding the previous, I say the 2015, 2016, when you didn't have enough coders. So we had to resort to other alternatives as translating. We had to translate the forms which were where we did not have enough coders. So, but I believe that with a wide participation today, those of you who know, if you know friends or colleagues of these particular languages, can you please encourage them also to join and take part and actively help us in coding, so that we don't have to actually translate the forms in order to complete our task. So now I'll just have quickly run through the status of VA coders as on 1st October. If you those of you who have already done the coding, you'll know that we had 2 platforms. One is the causeofdeathindia.com, where we had the training modules, 6 training modules. So 1,796 people enrolled in the MINErVA platform, the causeofdeathindia.com, for training, and half of them completed. And after completion, 813 signed the MOU, or the non-disclosure agreement. Now, after that, and you all know that the coding platform was different, and so after the 813 have signed, we found that 810, almost all, completed the module 7, which made them eligible to be coders. And right now we have in our list 550 active coders. Now I'll just like to bring to your notice also that there's been a change in this coding platform. Earlier it was minervacoding.aims.edu, and it has been changed to edu.in. So please note this, in case you logged in to the old website, you will not be able to log in. You'll have to write .in in the end. Okay, so now I just another thing that we also want to show to all of you is the timelines of the coding process that we have been doing. So from the time the death happens and till the time the final code is assigned to the death. Okay, this is what the journey from there up till from the time the verbal autopsy is done up till the final coding of the death. So when a death occurs, and it takes almost about 607 days, these numbers are number of days for a VA to be done. This is actually because the whole process follows the SRS system, and all of you know that there is a lot of lag period between when a death happens, then a supervisor goes to verify the death and fills up the verbal autopsies. So that is the reason why there's such a lot of delay. So it's about 607, almost 2 years delay. And once the form is received in the ORGI, then they hand it over to us. And this is from here, the interface, what we are saying, the form received for QA. This is where our process actually starts. We receive the form and we subject it to quality assurance mechanisms. And then it becomes ready to be sent to all of you for coding. So if you can see here that it takes about 35 days for once we have been allotted, once we receive the forms, and after the QA to allocate the forms to the coders. So for the first, in the first instance, we allot each one form to each to two coders, coder 1 and coder 2. So if there is an agreement between the two, then we take it as a final cause of death. And we have found that almost in 2/3, so 67% agreement has been there between coder 1 and coder 2. Okay, and the whole time, and we have observed that there was a mean 23 days has been, it took about 23 days for the first level coding to be done. Now, in the other 1/3 of it, we had to send it to the coder 3. And also, if there is disagreement between coder 3 and the others, we had to send the forms to the adjudicator. So if you see, the whole process actually takes about 43 days. So in about 1.5 months, we actually complete this whole process of allocation up till the final code. So this is how we, but we are continuously trying to improve and reduce the number of days that we are trying to for coding. So we urge you, we really we request you that as soon as you receive the forms, please try to code them as early as possible, so that because you see that the delay happens in many steps. So that is also what we want to show you today. Now, another thing that we have done, as I told you, that last year we had presented the interim results to the ORGI, and where we wanted to show that there has been no difference between our system and the previous system which was running, because there was a concern with the government that once the system changes, the causes of death that have emerged that through our system may be different from the previous, so it may give rise to certain complications. I mean, learning problems, particularly in the because it's a very sensitive issue. So, but we are happy to show you that there has been not much difference. In fact, there's a quite our VA, which was done in 2017, really compares well with that which was done in 2010 to 2013 by the Million Death Study. And if we want to see the breakup of the causes of death that we have analyzed, we found that almost the first 5 are almost exactly the same. 27.2 proportion of causes of death by cardiovascular diseases was 27.2%, respiratory disease 9.2. So I will not read them out, but the message from here is that the top 10 causes of death are similar in both the systems. So we are confident that there is not much of a change, even though the systems have changed, but the system is actually running smoothly. So now, after the achievements of the AIMS and ORGI collaboration, I would just like to highlight a few things that there is because of this. I mean, we've had a very close collaboration with them, resulting in the agreement to extend our MOU for the next 5 years, and we are happy to let you know that though it's in the process, but we'll be getting that extension. But we also realize that there has been a lot of delay, undue delay during the cause of death, during the verbal autopsy, the filling of the forms in the field. So because of that, we are trying to move into another electronic system. So we have developed an app-based system, which is being developed by us, by our team only in-house. So which will reduce the delay in filling up the forms and sending the forms through RGI and scanning and quality assurance. At every step we try to, if we can, the manual part of it can be eliminated through the electronic data system. We aim to have almost real-time data entry by the field workers at the field, and which can be accessed by us here in the center. So that's why our aim is now to streamline the data transfer and improve the quality of the cause of death mechanism. So now the updates that I would just like to share with you is we have completed, as I told you, that 2015 data coding is completed, and 2018 is also almost complete, 98% completed, and we expect to submit the report for the 2 years by the end of this year. And the MOU for renewal is due, and then it is in the progress. And probably the best news for today is that our first paper describing the MINErVA network has been published. It has been published in the Journal of Global Health, and you can access it. It's available now online in the website, in their website, in the current issue. So this is all that I have from my side for today. I don't want to take too much time. So thank you, and we hope to have continuous support from your side to make it a successful venture. Now, I would just like to ask Ion to open the poll. I request all of you to look at your screens. We would like to take an online poll as to what do you feel has been the what do you feel about MINErVA, about the coding process? So we have 3 simple questions that we would like to show you, and then can you all kindly give your opinions, and this will be a very useful feedback for us. So can you all see it on the screen?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, so
The panelists can also vote if one want.
it will be biased if we also.
Please let me know when to stop the voting.
Okay, is it like when all of them have given their polls, or how does it?
Ma'am, only 50
Just give
seconds.
them 30 seconds or 1 minute, and then we can close.
It's almost 1 minute, sir.
And
Okay.
how many have responded? Do we know? Otherwise, just close it. No problem. Otherwise, we'll unnecessarily delay the whole thing.
Yeah, 136, and I can see how many of them have voted. Okay, we'll just leave it for 1 minute, and then we will stop.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can close it and then show the results.
Okay, sir. Sir, is it visible, the results?
Yes, it is visible.
Oh,
Okay, good to see majority being in excellent and good.
yeah.
Almost 90% being there, and about 1 to 3% being in the other extreme of unsatisfactory,
Yeah,
or
there's one person who's unsatisfied. So, okay.
anyhow, we'll try that. This thing will,
That's good. Yeah,
he or she will also get
yeah,
converted into a satisfied user by
right.
next couple of years,
Yeah.
maybe. Okay, I think
Okay,
thank you
so
everybody for reposing faith in our system, and we move to the next session. Dr.
okay,
Sumit.
so
Yeah.
yes, Dr. Sumit is going to talk on coder engagement strategy. Dr. Sumit, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So very good afternoon to everybody. I'll request Dr. Ion to please kindly share the slides.
Are the slides visible?
No, not yet.
They are going to be visible. It just says
No,
started
it says
screen.
paused. My screen sharing is paused. And I'm not able to.
Okay, so shall I display from my end?
Just a second, sir. I'll try again and call back. Just a second, sir. I'll just try once again. Yeah,
Yeah.
can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so moving from there, we are starting with the coder engagement plans and strategies from here on. So I mean, there are multiple stakeholders in the entire MINErVA network, but I think the most critical stakeholder in the entire process of cause of death ascertainment, are all of you, and they are the physician coders, without which the system and the outputs that we envisage to have for a reliable and an accurate system for cause of death in India is not going to be there. So I just want to take this opportunity in expressing gratitude to all of you that you are contributing to a very significant cause, and you remain a very important pillar as far as this entire MINErVA network is concerned. Next slide. Can we move to the next slide?
Seem to be having some trouble. Sir, yeah, now it's come?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as highlighted, previously, we have a pan-India geographical distribution, and and this also is reflected in the attendance today in this webinar, wherein from almost all part of the country we have our coders. So what you see here is 1796 coders who have expressed the interest to be associated with us and are being registered. Next. uh, there is a concern in terms of the proficiency of language and the kind of coding that is being undertaken by our coders. I mean, by and large, English and Hindi remain the most known languages, and they are the most the bulk of the forms that we receive for coding. But there is definite requirement for coding in other languages also, and we do face challenges. So I'll take I'll echo that we require more coders, in different languages, as expressed earlier in Oriya, Malayalam, Kannada, Tamil, Manipuri, Khasi languages. So you all are our ambassadors, and we request you, to kindly, have your network also being integrated into this larger MINErVA network. Next. So if we see, our experience in terms of what the outputs that we have, and we have just a kind of a prelim analysis for 2015 forms, what we see that, the each coder, the output that is being, contributed, it's still, that can be improved. And what you see over here is that, 24% of our coders, just coded about less than 50 forms in totality. And similarly, if we say 51 to 100, just coded 16% of the 16% just contributed 51 to 100 forms in the entire lot that we had in 2015. So definitely, there is a scope of improvement in terms of how many forms or how many VA forms can be coded by a single coder. And if we say that we have the maximum batch of 3 batches in a month, we expect around 30 to 45 forms in a month that can be coded by a single coder. And an annual basis, the output could be say 300 to 350 forms per a single coder. So we are yet to have this number being achieved, and of course, in times to come, the load for coding is going to be on rise, because there are sufficiently number of years which are pending wherein the VA coding has to be performed. So there is definite case for improving the quantity. Of course, we are concerned about quality also, and there are some very minuscule, but yes, who are coding to the excess. We want at least 300 to 350. That's what the optimal number of VA codings in a year is what we expect a coder should code in a year. Next slide, please, Dr. Ayon. So, as I mentioned, that coders are very important stakeholders in this entire exercise. We need to engage more actively, proactively with the coders. we want, to all the coders that are being associated with the MINErVA platform, to stay for a longer period of time. We want to have a long-term relationship with all of you, because the more you stay, the better is going to be the returns. I mean, the training also that, we have envisaged, what you all have undergone. I mean, there's a better return of investment if we don't have, the dropouts. And also, one of the main reason, why we want to engage more now directly with the coders, though our earlier, strategy was that our network partners were directly in dialogue with the coders. But we want that all of you, as important stakeholders, should have a sense of ownership. And therefore, we are investing now, as how, we can reach out directly to each one of the coder. Currently, the active coders that we have are around, 550. I mean, though the entire pool that we have, which are registered, is about 1796. Next slide. So this is one effort that we have initiated, hosting these webinars, so that we can have a direct contact with all of you from AIMS Technical Support Unit, which is housed at Center for Community Medicine at in New Delhi. But we want to reach directly to each one of the coders that are there. So having this webinar is one of such initiative. Next slide. We have number of dissemination activities. I mean, we are quite active in social media. We have a Twitter account. We are active, on WhatsApp, and the network partners also with their own network have active, WhatsApp. We do, generate newsletters, and our coders. I mean, we send, newsletters to our coders. And time to time, whenever the conferences happen, we try to, have sessions and disseminate the findings. Next. There are definitely, more areas that we want to engage. I mean, webinar, social media is one. But then, we also now are thinking about that we will acknowledge and appreciate the milestones in terms of the output that you are contributing to. So if you contribute, say 100 or 200, or you achieve a milestone of coding 300 forms, we are going to have the appreciation. And we are working out that we can recognize, in other means also, and acknowledge the significant contribution that our coder pool is contributing to. Of course, we are concerned about, a right mix and balance of quantity and quality. I just would like, before ending, want your attention, to few features of our dashboard, as how you can see and you can, find out that how much is your contribution on your own. So this is actually, a snapshot from our the coding platform, which you engage from time to time. And as this was being mentioned earlier, our coding platform, there is a change. So it's MINErVA coding.aims.edu.in. So you can see, how many forms that you have coded, and this actually gives you, periodically the numbers in the bars that you see, which can actually tell you, how much you have contributed to the entire coding process. Next slide. There's another indicator which tells you about your own performance, because each VA form is being matched with the another coder, and the cause of death is being matched, and that's how we come at agreement. So one can see how many forms, how many codings that you have done have actually matched with the same cause of death with the another coder, and that actually tells you about the quality, in terms of the output and the coding that you are generating, which is a very, very important aspect of performance. And this will be elaborated later as we go through the webinar more. Next. The other option that I just want to say, that there is an option of support, and I'll urge you that, in case you have any query and you want to get in touch directly, where it could be an issue of any type, there are options available that you can directly reach to us. Next slide. Either through an email or through a WhatsApp number or a phone number. which is actually there and always there, and you are free and welcome to get in contact with our team, so that any kind of query that you have, we should be able to resolve, and we directly connect with you. I think now we have a poll, as we want to have more and more coder engagement strategies. I mean, this webinar is first of in series, and we want to have more of such sort, so that we can have more kind of opportunities of talking with you, and also sharing with the kind of newer aspects and the other issues which are there, which can actually help you learn more and make you code better. So I think there are two questions that you will see now. So I'll request Jaita to please launch the poll, and you can respond. So one talks about the frequency of the webinar. I mean, what should be the frequency of the webinar? It should be every month once in 2 months, once in 3 months, once in 4 months. And the second question is, what is the preferred time for attending the webinar? So is it 2:30 to 4 p.m., 3 to 4:30 p.m., 3:30 to 5 p.m., or 4 to 5:30 p.m.? So we'll take the response now.
So should I end it, sir? 127 participants have just answered.
Okay, I think we should end it and see the results.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so the majority have said once in 3 months, and with a quarter of about every month once in 2 months, and majority have actually voiced about the timing as 4 to 5:30 p.m., which is what the current timing for this webinar is. So thank you for that contribution and knowing us your thoughts. We'll move on to the next session, next talk by Dr. Ayon. It's great privilege to introduce him. He's actually a very strong backbone at AIMS Technical Support Unit. He's a part of our unit for cause of death ascertainment based on verbal autopsies, and is also doing his PhD on causes, basically elaborating the features of narratives and how to capture the narration of death, which is there in verbal autopsy. So over to you, Dr. Ayon.
Right, sir. Thank you so much. And I'll just try and show you my screen. Just give me a second. I have to stop sharing. I'm not able to stop sharing the screen. So just give me a second to come in over here. Jaita, I'm not able to stop sharing. Is there an issue over here? Hello?
Sir, yes, sir, but I think there is some issue with the computer, maybe.
Yeah, now it's, I'll just come back. I'll just try it. Just give me 1 minute.
Are you able to do it, sir?
Yeah, I think I should be able to do it now. I think it should be coming now. Yes, I think, is it visible?
Yes, sir, now it's visible.
Yeah, okay. There seems to be somewhat of an issue. Anyway. Yeah. Okay, so welcome everybody. Sorry for that we're having a little bit of a technical issue. But just wanted to welcome all of you. And I am going to be talking about the quality assurance and control aspects of the MINErVA coding platform.
Ayan, maybe you are not sharing the final presentation. Are you sure this is the?
Yes, sir. I think this is a
Okay.
one. I'll just.
Because it is not visible clearly also. Some of the
I think
charts
that's
are not
corrupted.
coming
Yeah.
on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I agree. It doesn't seem to be the correct presentation. Just give me, sir, Dr. Anand, if you could just take up some of the questions.
Okay. So maybe some network partners want to say something about their experience. When till Ion gets his slides going, does anyone of the network partner want to say anything?
Sir, some attending doctors are raising hands. So should I unmute the call?
Yeah, you can unmute them.
First is
For the
Doctor.
time being, we can unmute and then we will.
Okay, okay, sir. Sarit Sharma has raised hands. I'm just allowing to go.
No, we are not opening for discussion right now. I'm only asking network partners from medical colleges and their units to say something. We'll take all questions from all the partners at the later end of the session. I'm not sure how many network partners themselves are there in the, but if somebody wants to say something. Okay, so my network partners don't seem to be, maybe they are not, many of them are there.
My slides are okay now. I think I've resolved.
Go ahead, share, and then maybe you can mute the others now. Yeah.
Is it visible now?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, great. So sorry everybody for that bit of a technical issue, and I think I seem to have resolved it. So today I'll be speaking to you about the quality assurance and the control methodologies which we intend to adopt in MINErVA. As you can make out that the most important thing is that we are coding, and we are coding to generate reliable national mortality statistics. Therefore, I think it's quite obvious that we need to ensure a certain amount of quality. So as Dr. Anand had pointed out in his introductory remarks, while we want you to be fast and we want you to be responsive and do all the coding quite quickly, at the same time, I don't think we can compromise on quality. Because this is the basis on which the entire mortality burden, all the statistics are going to be generated. And if there are errors which are avoidable, I think those have to be controlled. So with that, I'll just come on to it. How do we assess the quality of a VA system, any VA system? So the key indicators are that the cause-specific mortality fractions at the population level, it should correspond well with other sources. That is the hospital deaths, if they are giving a certain amount of, let us say they are saying that road traffic accidents are about 20%. So our VAs cannot say that it is 5%. It has to correspond. A low proportion of ill-defined or unclassified deaths, as low as possible. We do know that as in the elderly age group, in fact, there is enough literature to suggest that above 70s, it is difficult to get a very specific cause of death, and this proportion of ill-defined rises in ages above 70. But definitely, we can make an effort to keep that down. And below 69 years, I think we should be able to really bring it down. I'll come to the indicators which we have developed for that later. And the third thing which we look at when we assess the quality of a VA system are the proportion of garbage codes. Now, this term garbage codes may be a little new to some of us, not so new to a lot of people who have been engaged in verbal autopsy for some time. So what are garbage codes? Well, they are ICD-10 codes which correspond to conditions which cannot be an underlying cause of death. For example, you code a death as I-50, heart failure. Now, heart failure may be because of a sequelae of myocardial infarction. It may be because there was a congenital heart disease. It may be due to septic shock or septicemia. So many causes. So heart failure is actually a mechanism of death and not the underlying cause. Similarly, very commonly we come across N18, chronic renal failure. What was the chronic renal failure caused by? Was it diabetic cause? Was the kidney affected due to diabetes? Was it hypertensive? So we need to know these things. So coding these, they are called as garbage codes. So let us see how we have done so far. Well, so this is a comparison of the CSMFs coded by the MINErVA platform based on the 2015 VA dataset, which is about 37,000 forms. And we are comparing it to our predecessor system and the report which was generated in 2010-13. So if you see, I think it roughly corresponds. And the only significant findings are that the proportion of ill-defined deaths, over here it was 12.4, over here we have 16. So it rose by almost 30% over the previous report. So that is a cause for concern and something which we need to keep in mind and bring it down. And the ill-defined deaths mostly are the R codes, you know, the R99s, the R50s, fevers, those are the ill-defined deaths. And what was the proportion of the garbage code? Well, we had almost 30% garbage code, which is quite high. And we need to really engage all of you to engage in some training and know what are the garbage codes so that we don't assign these as final causes of death. So let us come to what are the factors which affect the quality of cause of death ascertainment through VA. Well, the death itself, you know, if it's an RTA and I don't know, the person was found bleeding on the side of the road, I don't know what vehicle hit him, it is very difficult to code the specific mode of injury. An unobserved death, which often happens, a sudden death, person had his dinner, went to sleep in the morning, when we went to wake him, he was found dead. So you have no symptoms, you have no description of the terminal event, how do you code it? The next is the tool. The tool, well, you have to have a balance between asking too many questions and going only on a text narrative. So the SRS tool, which is the tool which we're using now, is a simple 2-page tool with a reliance on the text narrative. And why it was done was that we needed to use a survey tool which could be used, you know, by, which could be read easily, understood easily by the field workers, and it could be administered in mass. A lot of the research sites, you know, which are engaging in verbal autopsy, they use much more detailed questionnaires. With the structured part, the close-ended questions are much more. Whereas, like for example, there's a comparison, I can tell you that the WHO tool has almost 400 items. Of course, a lot of skip patterns in it. So often with a paper-based tool, the other things are that there are incomplete fields. So incomplete fields in the sense that when I ask for negative symptoms or risk factors, let's say the field worker hasn't filled it in. Or he just, so I don't know whether it was there or not there. He just fills in the narrative and the demographic details and that's it. So we have no way of knowing whether those risk factors like heart disease was there, hypertension was there, not there, we don't know. There are processing issues. Sometimes what happens is these forms are scanned and then converted electronically and sent to you. What happens is that the narrative part and the structured part, there is a mismatch, which I think many of you may have faced. And there is an over-reliance on the narrative part because there are hardly any structured questions in the current tool. Coming to the interviewer, the field interviewer, the training is very important of the field interviewer. Does he know what questions to ask? Has he selected the correct respondent? Has he been able to establish a rapport? Death is a very emotional time. You know, the family is grieving and you have to be able to establish the rapport and ask the correct questions and elicit the information which you need. And which is then going to help the coders find out what is the underlying cause of death and code accordingly. The interval between the death and the VA interview is also important. Generally, we say that, you know, you should give about 2 or 3 weeks time to the family to get over the immediate grief. And after that appropriate mourning period, that is when the field interviewer should approach them. And I don't need to tell you about recall bias. The longer the interval, this comes into play. Unfortunately, at this time, we have almost more than a year's gap between the death taking place and the field worker actually going and interviewing the family. So that is another reason for lack of quality in the narratives. Coming to the physician, which is all of you who are gathered here.
And you'll have to speed up. Huh?
So training in
yeah.
So training in COD ascertainment from the VA, what is your clinical knowledge and how you apply your skills. So what we know that these three factors, the stool, interview and physician, these are modifiable. So how are we assessing the quality of the VA conducted by the interviewers? Well, we are asking all of you to grade the narrative. So that gives us that's an indicator for us that where we need to train the field workers. So this is the scoring system on your website. Whenever you get a form on the right, you get this column. We are asked to grade. And this is how we grade and interpret it as poor, fair or good narrative. So let us see. So, almost 43% of you have graded the, almost 43% times it has been graded as poor, which we agree with. What are the most important things which are being missed? Well, negative symptoms. 85% of the time, no negative symptoms are mentioned. 40% of the time, chronology of events cannot be established. So if the chronology of the terminal, what is the terminal event is not known, then how can we code the underlying cause of death? And also information on comorbidities and risk factors often absent, 60% of the time. So how to improve the quality? Well, we have suggested to the ORGI that the conduct of the VA, instead of being 6 months after the enumeration of deaths, it should take place simultaneously. So that will reduce the time interval. We have trained the field interviewers. More than 90% of all the DCO supervisors, the MINErVA network partners have been training and they have finished the training. So hopefully this training will reflect in the interviews done for coming years. And one thing, food for thought is, rather than keep it completely open narrative, are semi-structured narratives the way ahead? Do we give them hint questions so that they fill up only the relevant parts? Because many times the narrative may be very long, but the relevant part of it is only maybe half a phrase or 2 lines or something like that. And what is the quality assurance mechanism going to be? Well, we are proposing the quality control field visits by the MINErVA network partner team. The team will go and they will redo VA interviews in 2 SRS units and they will compare their results with what was earlier done. They will observe 2 VAs per SRS unit. The VA is done by the supervisor and it is being observed by the network member team. And randomly they will select 100 VA records at the local DCO office and do a scrutiny that what all are the lacunae, and a feedback and refresher training will be organized on site. Now coming to the quality in VA coding, which is what all of you are responsible for. So this is our process flow. The VA form gets allocated randomly to 2 coders. Each form goes to at least 2 coders and they blindly code. If it matches, the ICD code matches at the level of the WHO VA code category, well, that is the final ICD code. If there is a mismatch, it goes to a 3rd coder who is also blinded to the 1st and 2nd coder. He assigns the ICD code. Matches with either of them, finalized ICD code, else it goes to the adjudicator who then gives the final ICD code. So for the 2015 data set, these are our agreement percentages. At the first level between coder 1 and 2, it is 57%. At coder 3 level, it is 27%. And 16% of the forms presently are going to the adjudicators. So as you can see that this assigned ICD codes, of these 16% forms which went to the adjudicators have actually graded 23% forms as having 1 or more unreasonable codes. This is a cause for concern, definitely. And I've already told you that garbage codes assigned were about 30%, 29.8% to be exact. There were 425 injury deaths which are assigned S and T codes. If you recall your training, the training module clearly states that S and T codes are not to be used to code underlying cause of death. And there are also 23 neonatal deaths which were assigned obstetric codes. How do the coders fare individually? Well, this is the percentage agreement. Out of the active coder list, that is 550 of you, 77% have more than 75% matching. But these people are cause for concern. I mean, you really should not be having these low matching percentages. probably it requires some refresher training. And if we over a period of time, we see that, there's no improvement by these coders, I think then we'll have to stop assigning forms to them. Now, this is finally the quality assurance framework which we have developed. We will be redoing the VA interviews and analyze where we can make those better by observing it. We will do the scrutiny of the VA forms. So these are the top 3 are what we will be doing in the field to ensure that the field worker elicits good quality information which is available to you. And finally, we'll also be doing a physician coder assessment, and we'll evaluate the reasonability of the codes assigned by all of you individually. And from time to time, if we feel that the quality is lacking, we may ask you to undergo a refresher training module. And finally, this is the entire crux of it. If you see, this is the quality control indicators. What we want is that the narrative score, agreement rate, unreasonable proportion, garbage code proportion, and ill-defined death proportion. So presently, this narrative score, poor narratives are 43.5%. By training and by doing the quality control steps, we hope to bring it down to less than 20% by 2020 deaths. That is 2020 deaths. So that probably come for coding a couple of years later. The proportion of agreement between coders level 1 and level 2 combined, presently it is 84%. We want to improve that to greater than 90%. Unreasonable codes are very high, almost 23%. We need to get that down to less than 5%. 30% codes are being classified as garbage codes. We need to get it down to 10%. And finally, this ill-defined deaths proportion, which is at 16% now, the target is to get it down to less than 10%. So now I think if I'm ready for the poll. So this is an important thing that I feel that, quality has to be ensured, then you should be paid for quality work. So we would like to know your opinion on this. If you can launch the poll. I think we can stop the poll now and publish the results, more or less. Well, so most of you seem to think that it will be a disincentive, but a significant proportion do agree that, well, honorarium should be withheld if you are assigning unreasonable ICD codes. So, well, Dr. Anand, we'll have to take a call on that.
Yeah, just an answer to a question which has been asked is they were not clear what is an unreasonable code. So when a form goes to an adjudicator, the adjudicator sees all the 2 or 3 codes which have occurred before, and if in his or her judgment decide that the coding given by the ICD code given by the previous coder was completely unreasonable, and I'm generally very lax with it. For example, there is no mention of any heart disease in the narrative, but the coder has made it a heart disease, or there is no liver symptoms at all, related symptoms, but so it is completely unrelated and shows a complete lack of application. That is when we label it unreasonable, and you can see that of the forms that come for adjudication, almost 1/5 are been made as unreasonable. So I think there is that's an issue that we are going to raise, even Rakesh will raise in the next example, that people have to learn to apply their mind. They cannot go beyond what is there in the narrative and the form and make their own diagnosis. So that is what is unreasonable. But I think that sets up the pace, and there are many questions already asked in the chat box on coding. and which now Dr. Rakesh will address many of those issues on coding, and we will straight away take up other questions on coding related, which he will answer. So Dr. Rakesh.
Yeah, Ayan,
Yeah,
good
I'll
evening.
just give you the slides, sir.
Yeah, please.
So are we going to start with the poll or after an initial?
Yeah, initial 3-4 slides are there. Then I'll.
Just give me a second, sir, to share my screen.
Ayan, am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir, you're audible. I'll just give you the slides.
Okay, that's fine.
Is it visible, sir?
Yeah, it's visible.
I'll just put it on slideshow. Just a second, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so before I start, I would like to take it from where Ayan left. And I'm not very, I'm not convinced that unreasonable code should be less than 5%. I feel that it should be 0%, unreasonable one. But yeah, so I'm not going into, so I'll just first focus on some basics, though, I'm not taking this as a kind of training for how to code. So I'll just take first, so one thing is very important to understand what is an underlying cause of death. And the way WHO defines it and the way it is disease or injury that initiated the train of morbid events. So that is very important. So event which initiated the events. So we have to, from the narrative or in a kind of child form or neonatal form, there are substantial information given in the structured format also. So from whatever information is available, we have to kind of understand what exactly is that event. And that is basically underlying cause of death. And then we assign ICD-10 code as per the, next slide, please. Ivan, can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So as you might have seen this slide in your training manuals also, there are certain steps in which we assign cause of death from VA forms. So first read the narrative and medical and personal history for clues to diagnosis. Arrange all symptoms in the chronological sequence. So that is very important. But again, that all depends on how good or bad narrative or a VA form is filled. And that is not entirely in your hand. If the narrative is very poor, it is very difficult to establish a chronological sequence. And we have realized that, and we focused on training. So we conducted training for supervisors so that at least we know that which came first and which came later. So that is very important. And then we list 2 or 3 probable causes of death based on symptoms and events. We look for further clues, look for the negative causes of death, and then we assign one underlying cause of death. So that is the process that we are supposed to follow. And if you kind of systematically follow this, we should be able to get the one underlying cause of death, subject to obviously how good or bad that narrative is. Next slide, please. So there are certain fundamentals, which though in training manual also we kind of emphasized on that, but which I think that this is a time to re-emphasize again. So never report cardiopulmonary arrest or respiratory failure as cause of death. Avoid assigning ill-defined cause of death like fever, senility as far as possible. I can understand that many a times that is not possible because narrative is very vague or important pieces of information are just missing from the narrative or the other part of VA. But given situation, see that if we can make out something from that. And the last one is don't assume or imagine symptoms and causes which aren't present actually. So the whole idea is that based on given narrative, based on given structured information, we have to form an opinion, not on something which is not there. So based on our clinical judgment, what should be the cause of death, and that we have to kind of assign cause of death. So just go back. Can we have the poll now? So we have just a set of 3 questions that are there. So I just want to take your time to 2 minutes or so. Just see that you can answer all of them, and then we can have we can take it from there. Do you have sufficient number of this thing? No?
Only 46, 50 doctors.
I think we can wait for a minute more, sir. Very few,
Okay.
less than
Yeah,
50% have voted yet.
Okay.
This is a bit more difficult than the previous ones. People have to apply their mind. If you want them to apply their mind,
Yeah,
maybe we should
yeah.
give them some time.
Maybe 2-3 minutes. I mean, that is important before we proceed.
You can see a lot of confusion in this, no? See many of them.
So if we get closer to 100, we can stop the poll.
So it's 110 right now.
How many are right now?
We'll stop it at 250.
Okay, okay.
Minute 50.
It's not 2 minutes 50 seconds. Should I stop it?
Yes.
We looked at it. Can you just wait for some time?
Acha, wait.
That is important actually. We just maybe it is 5:14. Another minute. By 5:15 we can stop it.
How many people have responded till now?
66%. 132 out of 200.
132 the coffee hai fir bhi.
Yeah, I think we should go ahead, no?
Yeah. So
Yeah, let's stop and go ahead.
yeah. So what we can see from the response is that yeah. So the question was, the disease was 80 years old and was taking treatment from a local doctor. He had pain abdomen a few days back, for which he was prescribed some treatment. One night he went to sleep. In the morning, when his son went to wake him up, he was dead. And 38% said R96, 21% says R99, but 32% says R10. In the second question, where there was an injury on the head, 81% says it was a motor vehicle accident, but 14% also says injury on the head. And the third was most of the response was birth asphyxia, 50%, but 50% also says labor and delivery complicated by umbilical cord complications and a short gestational period also. Yeah. So we can close this. Ayan, can you start sharing the slides again? Next one. Next. Yeah. So basically what happens is that we pick these forms because during our evaluation, when we started looking at the coding, etc., through adjudication and other process, can you hear me, Ayan?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, because there's some comment in the chat that sound is a bit low. So yeah, so what happens in the when we looked at the codings, we found that these are the common errors. So common errors we found were those in the injuries, in the deaths which was occurring among older adults, and neonatal deaths. So these were some of the common errors which we found that was happening. So then we thought that we can kind of look at this. So next slide, please. So first we'll focus on the injuries. So for all deaths due to injuries, cause of injury has to be on the mode of injury. So you should only use V01 to Y98. And I think in the, now from the coding platform, we have removed codes S01 to T99, but we had that earlier one. So the nature of the injury or the body part, which is the, where the injury is there, that is not to be coded as cause of death. So cause of death has to be how the injury occurred. So what is the mode of injury? Some injuries, difficulties may be experienced in the type of injury that lead to death. And that kind of injury, kind of difficulty comes mostly when you are looking at the cases of, say, intentional self-harm or suicides, many times you don't know. I mean, the kind of narrative is very vague, or in cases of road traffic accidents, etc. So I mean, you can also use your clinical judgment. So what should be the appropriate cause of death in that condition? Next slide, please. So I will just take you through some of the kind of case studies, which is from the actual narratives, actual case studies that we found on this, found during our coding for year 2015. So one narrative says, according to the respondent, child died due to drowning in water. In his word, my son had gone towards the pond with other children. He fell down in pond and while playing, after taking out from the pond, he was taken to government hospital for treatment where doctor declared him dead. So this was the code, and actually, next slide, please. Yeah. So we got many codes which said that it is because of T75, effects of other external causes. Though this death, so what is the mode of the death is drowning. So we should code it as W70, what is drowning and submersion following fall in natural water. So basically, this is just to reemphasize that cause of death should be the mode of injury, not like how it happened. I mean, what are the site of injury, what is the nature of injury, etc. Next, another case is that another case study is a 40-year-old male. According to the respondent, deceased met with an accident 7 months ago in some place. He sustained head injury, was taken to the hospital. Respondent informed that deceased got brain hemorrhage due to accident. He was admitted, but his condition continued to deteriorate and he was serious. Doctor told him it was impossible to recover from the head injury and he was sent home where he died. So basically what we found that many coders actually coded this as other and unspecified injuries of head. But as we said earlier, it should be like non-motor vehicle accident, type of vehicle, unspecified. Somalia is saying in the previous study, why not W63? We will be perfectly possible. You go with W63, I think that should be okay. And in the earlier example, that should not be a problem in the case of drowning. As long as we are clear that the cause of death is drowning and not kind of external injury or something else, we should be fine. Next slide, please. So basically, we can have, so in this example, as we see that pedestrian was hit by a motorcycle. He also had hypertension and diabetes. Then he had an accident. He had fractured femur. He also had chest pain and acute MI. So what happened is that 15 days back, he had kind of injury by, he was hit by a motorcycle. But when you just look at it, one day he also had a history of, so he had fracture and the fracture was treated and he was all right. Now what happened is that a day before his death, he had a kind of chest pain and sweating for one day, and he was taken to the hospital and he died in the hospital. What should be the cause of death? So here there are two kind of chain of event is occurring. And here you have to be, and you have to bring in your kind of clinical judgment to see that whether the chest pain is because of, it could be underlying myocardial infarction. It could also be because of fracture. You have pulmonary embolism, etc. So it is because of that. And if based on your best clinical judgment, you feel that pulmonary embolism would not present 15 days after the fracture and it should be, so we'll go with acute MI. So again, there will be multiple chain of events and we have to use our clinical judgment, our best clinical judgment, that what would be the most appropriate cause of death, which chain of event led to death, and appropriately we should apply the underlying cause of death. So that is important in case of injuries also. Next slide, please. So the most important point to be remembered, which we have been emphasizing, we have emphasized in our training module also, and the coder platform also we have said, that the chapter that is 19 and 21, so 19 deals with external causes of death. So that code has to, should not be there. So S00 to T98 are the codes which should not be used at all. And we are again re-emphasizing that. So we should look for those appropriate codes in the chapter 20. Next slide, please. So now coming to the old age, I mean, and this is, as Ayan said, and this is a problem with the viral autopsy, because in old age, people have got multiple morbidities, and many a times symptoms are very vague. So it's at times very difficult to establish the cause of death, chain of event which lead to death. So, I mean, again, you have to, it depends on what kind of narrative is there. If narrative is good, it is still easier to assign cause of death. If narrative is not that clear, then it becomes difficult. So there was another case example that according to the respondent, the disease was too old. Now, the question comes, what is too old? As somebody said, nobody dies of old age. They just, unless they're too old. I mean, obviously, if somebody is say 110 years or 100 years, the senility can still be the cause of death. But generally, a person dies of some disease, some illness. The only problem is it is very difficult to make that from the narrative, because narrative is not very clear on that. So 2-3 months before the death, she complained of abdominal pain. She had dizziness. In that period, she was treatment was taken from Dr. Sarkar from Varun Nagar. The physician physical weakness increased. He went to daughter's house for recuperation and died there on some day. The respondent clarified that disease was too old. So again, the issue is that, I mean, if we just write senility as cause of death, it's very difficult at many times to know that what exactly is, what exactly a person died of and what symptoms or whatever he had. So in this case, I would still prefer you go with the abdominal pain. Next slide, please. Or maybe if you can't make out any deaths, you can just go with R99. But here we know that he had some abdominal pain also. So we can still go with the R10, which is unspecified abdominal pain. It would be still okay if you go with R99, that cause cannot be specified, but senility in a 70-year-old, I think is not the correct cause of death. Next slide, Ayan, please. Yeah. So this is example of another 80-year-old female. The disease was too old and had paralytic attack 6 months back. And half of the body stopped working and she had lost mental equilibrium. She was having a lot of difficulty and sought treatment from various places, but there was no relief because of old age and weakness. She passed away. Now we saw many people quoting senility as a cause of death in this. But again, there's a very clear chain of event which can be made out from stroke. So you should be, coding this as stroke, which is the code I64. And just not go because a person is old as 80-year-old. So we should code it as senility. So that is what, next slide please. So we should go with stroke, not with the senility in this kind of thing. Next slide please. So before I go on neonatal death, I will just take a few questions which I saw in the chat box in the questions earlier also and now also. So there was one question: if somebody had just hypertension and diabetes and there's no other cause of death given, what should we do? The whole idea of this whole coding system and underlying cause of death, if you just look at the international death form, which just says that whichever is the in the chain of event, whichever is the lowest column that we should assign cause of death. So we should know that what people are dying from, and we can take action. So if we say, if we just write R99 or something like that, you just lose all the information. So I would still go with the code hypertension, which is, we can just say essential hypertension and assign appropriate cause of death. The other question was that, which I think there was some confusion, that if say somebody dies of diabetes and he has renal failure, what should be the cause of death? And I think we have made that very clear in our training manual, that though, I mean, that comes in the garbage code, but still we should go with diabetic nephropathy. There was one questions regarding if say somebody is in old age and is malnourished, what could be the cause? I mean, malnutrition as a cause of death among elderly is one of the most under recognized or under reported cause of death, but that is obviously a very important cause. So if from the narrative we are very concerned that a person died of malnutrition, if there is no other history, like what was the cause of malnutrition, so if we know that maybe because he was not able to take liquid solid food or something like that, which points towards carcinoma of esophagus or something like that, then just because he stopped eating, we can still mark that as a malnutrition, and see E624 could still be the valid cause of death. So I think a few questions that I could see in the chat box earlier, I just tried to address that. Coming to neonatal deaths, I just want to say one point in neonatal deaths, that for neonatal deaths, cause of death has to be neonatal. Most of the neonatal deaths has its origin into the antenatal or interpartum period, but still the cause of death assigned has to be neonatal. So for neonatal cause of death, you should just go with neonatal death. Yeah, I mean, someone is asking sequelae of CVA 6 months. If that started a chain of event because of stroke, the person is lying on the bed and that caused problem, stroke could still be the valid underlying cause of death. Next slide, please, Aya. So I think this question, yeah, according to the respondent, the disease died due to premature birth of the baby. The delivery was done very urgently in 7 months because water broke, but the child weight was less than 2 kg at the time of delivery. So that at last in the same day, the baby expired. These are all real examples. And next slide, please. So here, as I said, we won't say preterm labor or premature rupture of the membrane as a cause of death. We would go with disorders related to short gestation and low birth weight, not elsewhere classified. Next slide, please. I think I've just addressed this. This is one of the questions that was there in the poll. And the narrative points towards, because there was cord around the neck, there was a prolonged labor. That's why the baby had birth asphyxia and the baby died. So cause of death should be birth asphyxia and not prolonged labor or obstructive labor, whatever. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so points to be remembered: never report maternal cause from ICD-10 chapter 15. For neonatal death, just look for the cause of death in the neonatal chapter. Next slide, please. R codes, that is a very important thing, and it is important to understand that quality of the oral autopsy system is, I mean, if we can keep our R code as low as possible, that kind of tells us what is the quality of the oral autopsy system. But more than you kind of doing that, I mean, that is that based on what kind of tool we have and what kind of narrative you have. So it all depends on what kind of information you are provided. But still, whatever information you are getting, we should try to see, as far as possible, we should go for the specific cause of death. Even within a specific cause of death, and there was some mention of garbage codes. But again, if you just look at the final kind of final cause of death, which is assigned, or final classification of disease, ultimately we will be kind of grouping that into, say, communicable diseases or non-communicable diseases, cardiovascular disease, etc. So if I say R99, that just becomes a garbage code. If I say R96, so R96 in anyone more than 30 years of age goes into cardiovascular causes. Similarly, R50. So most of the time that will go into the, say, communicable diseases. So rather than coding it as R90, if the information suggests that a person died due to fever, and that is the only information that we have, we should go with R50. Similarly, there was some comment that R10, which is abdominal pain, is also a garbage code. Why to code that? Because at least we know that the illness is something related to the digestive system. So that much information. So that is better information that R99, we just says ill-defined and unspecified cause death. We don't know which system was involved. We have no clue about it. So as far as possible, try to avoid R99. Just if some symptom is there, just go with that symptom. If you think that that symptom might have led to death, if the narrative is not very clear, then you go with R99. Next slide, please. R50 is fever. There is no other signs and symptoms. Conditions help to establish the underlying cause of it. Just say that the disease had fever, and because of fever, he died. So we just go with fever. So next slide, please. Similarly, R54, which is the code for senility. As I said, nobody dies of senility, but senility is one of the frequently coded, frequently given underlying cause of death, because what happens is that there's no other narrative, and this is a problem with the kind of person who is conducting the VA, because once he goes to the respondent, he asks, what happened? How did he die? And the respondent just says he was too old, and that happens in our system. That person thinks that once a person reaches 80 years, if death occurs after that, that is all fine. There's nothing wrong, there's nothing abnormal about it. And rather than probing further, our interviewer doesn't probe further. He just writes that disease was too old and he died because of old age. If he probes further, I'm pretty sure that he'll get some symptoms that he stopped eating or he had some other illness. But just because of poor quality of VA, we are not able to get that. That's why we get too many senility. But we have seen, there are many forms where in 50s or early 60s, 54-year, 58-year-old kind of people were assigned the cause of death as senility. So we took that to our technical advisory group tag, and it was decided that if someone is less than a certain age, I think it was 80, then we should not be assigned senility as cause of death, because obviously that just is not correct. Next slide, please. R96, again, a very important course. And one of the examples that we had in poll, if all causes of sudden death, R96 is important. And this is very common. You find in the younger age group, young children, as well as in older adults. So what happens is that person goes to the bed in the night and wakes up dead. Or is found dead in the morning. So there's no history. He goes fine and he dies in the sleep. Same with the children. He was put to bed after feeding, and then mother sees after some time the child is dead. These are all instantaneous death, and this should be kind of, as per our classification system, all deaths which occurs after 30 years like this, instantaneous death, is finally classified as cardiovascular death. So if you give R96 scores, that helps us to better classify the illness rather than R99. So any case of instantaneous death or sudden death, we should code it as R96. Next slide, please. R99, when after all this, we have no other information. If we just says that, he was unwell, and that is very common in older adults, because, and this is not because the person doesn't have symptoms. This is because interviewer is failed to elicit all the symptoms that was present or establish the chronology. So there is more of a reflection on the VA per se, rather than it is more of a reflection on the quality of VA that has been conducted, quality of the interview. So kind of, if nothing is there, you go ahead and just say R99. Next slide, please. So what we have found all along is, and obviously we also ask whether you are confident of your diagnosis or not. So what I personally found, most of the people are very confident. I usually, when I code, I am not that confident, because obviously VA doesn't allow me to be very confident. So I will be more circumspect when the kind of history is not very, our narrative is not very good. So these are the common kind of challenges that we face while coding, but this is not the most important. The most important challenge is the most basic part, and I'll give you some of the examples. So the code says 46-year-old female sustained burns due to gas cylinder explosion, and somebody assigned that cause of death as unspecified transport accident. And when we are talking of the unreasonable cause, I think Dr. Anand talked about unreasonable causes. And I think these are things that are unreasonable. So narrative clearly says died in gas cylinder explosion, cause of death is put unspecified transport accident. Similarly, one narrative says horse was locked. And if I say coder 1, it says sequelae of poisoning by drugs, medicaments, and biological substances. Coder 2 says other ill-defined and unspecified cause of mortality. Coder 3 says other sudden death cause unknown. So if there is no narrative, what you should do is you should write to the ETSU, or I think Dr. Ayon has already provided the email ID on that this can't be coded, and the form will be resigned. And you will see what is the problem with this form. So that is very important. But even more basic is there are forms, and there's some comment that RGI kind of RGI, yeah, I didn't get that. So once I get that, I'll be able to answer that. RGI supervisors, being non-medical people, are not very good at. No, actually, what is the experience globally, and there is a validated experience, is that even non-medical person, lay person conducted VAs are good enough. All that is required that they should be trained enough. And what we come across in our this thing is that they were not very well trained, so we try to train them so that they can conduct the VA. Now, coming back to my presentation, and the most important problem and is that VA is very well. The narrative is very informative. Still, the cause of death is wrong. I'll give you 2 examples. 65-year-old male with cough and sore throat, increased severity of cough and dyspnea of 1 week duration. To me, it is a given case of pneumonia. Coder 1 says pulmonary tuberculosis, coder 2 says senility, coder 3 says flu. Now, you can't make out flu by a viral autopsy. Flu is a microbiological diagnosis. Unless you have a lab diagnosis available, you just can't say flu. Similarly, 65-year-old man can't be coded as died of senility. Pulmonary tuberculosis, you won't have 1 week duration. So these are things that we are looking at. Similarly, there was another narrative which says 75-year-old with loss of weight, cough with expectoration, chest pain, fever, loss of appetite. That to me, in any given Indian setup, is a giveaway for tuberculosis. CA lung can be there, but epidemiologically, we know that tuberculosis is much, much more common than CA lung. So I would go with that. But say coder 1 says CA lung, not unreasonable, but I would any day prefer tuberculosis to that. Coder 2 says sudden death, and coder 3 said COPD. So there is no substitute for application of sound medical judgment, lack of which is the most common cause of error in assigning cause of death, which we come across. Next, please. So just to summarize, there is no substitute for application of sound medical judgment. Cardiac arrest should never be assigned as underlying cause of death. In my view, no one dies of old age unless they're too old. In injuries, assign mode of injury and not the nature of injury as underlying cause of death. Though the genesis of neonatal death may be an anti-internatal period, we should assign neonatal causes as neonatal death. Next, please. I think that's it. Thank you. So if you have any queries, and I can see some of the questions. So
Rakesh, let me take over because we are already way beyond our time.
Yeah, for 12 minutes.
So, but fortunately, majority of them, I see almost 180 odd people still with us. So I'm sure they found it interesting and worthwhile to stay with us. So first of all, thank you to all of them for staying with us, not only joining, but also staying with us the whole journey. 2-3 things I will say. We had hoped that we'll have much more discussion, but it does not seem possible today because we are already more than 1.5 hours. But let me, the two, I think, major issues that we discussed here. One is obviously we are agreeing that quality, we are focusing on quality. That was the basic theme today. And we have tried to, and we agree that verbal autopsies, quality of verbal autopsies continues to be a problem. But we did training in 2017-18. So we are hoping that in the deaths that will come maybe a bit later, we will see an improvement in verbal autopsy. So that is an intervention that we have already done, but we are yet to see it being reflected in the kinds of verbal autopsy that we are going. And that's something that we will continue to do. We'll do reorientation again in a couple of years with all our network partners. So we hope to have a much better verbal autopsy. We are working with RG Office to improve the tool, and we are working with all of you to improve the coding, quality of coding. So all of it should result in improved coding. The second is issue of, I think, I'm sure Rakesh's presentation would have resulted in a multitude of questions on coding, how to code this, how to code that. Obviously, we cannot do all of them as a part of this webinar. But also we understand that it's not that doctors always arrive at the same diagnosis, and similarly, it's not necessarily that doctors will arrive at same cause of death also. It is the same thing. That's why we are not saying 100% agreement between two doctors. We are saying between 3 doctors, at least 2 of them we should agree within 90% of time. That's reasonable. So we will not get into the debate how to do this, why not do this, why not do that. That is a never-ending debate. We'll not get into it. But I definitely see a scope that we should have more discussion on what to code in a given situation, so that we move towards some certain common understanding. And I propose that in every future webinars, we will have at least 5 such case discussions. We'll keep half an hour for case discussions, where we will take discussion cases which either the coders have referred. You are welcome to write to us to take up a more difficult case which you had find difficulty in coding, and we'll take it up as a case discussion for the next webinar. So we will not discuss 2 things. First is we will not discuss individual coding issues right now, because we'll take it up as in the next webinar, and we are not going to take up any monetary issues. But there are some issues which have been taken up, which Ion will answer now, which is generic, that people complaining that they have not been getting forms. Some says from January, some says from whatever periods. So, can you explain why people are not getting forms?
Yes, sir, if I can come in on this. So the system randomly assigns forms. So based on whatever is your language proficiency and the number of forms of that particular language which we have, the system picks up the coder. Of late, we haven't had too many forms because, as you know, we already finished coding 2015, and almost 95% of 2016 also is gone. So there are very few forms which are left at the level of first 2 coders. Most of them are what is pending for adjudication. And since our MOU has not been renewed and we have not got new forms which have been uploaded in the platform, there is no backlog of forms. So probably that explains a little bit of the, you may have felt that during the lockdown period, you had a lot of free time, but you were not able to code forms because we're not giving you. That is true. But it's totally random and depends. So if you are, let's say, a Khasi coder, you know, where the coder form ratio is very low, you'll keep getting forms. If you are coding in English and Hindi, there may be 2-3 months gap before you get a form. I think that answers the question, sir.
Yeah. So with that, unless there are very critical questions, we'll open up only for 10 minutes and then we will close. So if somebody wants to, from the participants, want to ask a question which has not been covered, and there is not a question on money and not a question on a specific coding, you are welcome to ask. I request Jaita to allow the participants to ask questions, to
Yes,
unmute
sir.
them.
Yes, sir. Sir, Mehboobi Sheikh has raised hand.
Yeah, whosoever raised hands, please allow them to speak.
Please unmute Dr. Sheikh. Dr. Sarit Sharma, you can ask a question. You're unmuted. Dr. Sharit Sharma.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, my questions have already been answered in the discussion.
Excellent. So those who have raised their hands can remove them so that we don't.
Dr. Amit Kumar Patel.
Hello, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes,
Yeah,
go ahead. We can hear you.
It will be better if you give us feedback whether where we are incorrect, so that we can make corrections next time.
Yeah, we have discussed. We are not giving. You get a general feedback on the agreement that you have with the other participants. We are not, as of now, any system for giving individual feedbacks.
Sir, can we?
But what we are proposing at best, what we will do is that we will give you, against the forms that you coded, we will give you the final code what was done. But will not be, and we will leave it to you to decide why we did not take your code and why was another code.
At least, sir, for most common mistakes, like sir garbage codes and like this.
Yeah, so that we are giving. No, that's a part of this process that we have started. But we will see. I get your point. We will discuss within ATSU how to improve our feedback on individual. We have been discussing this issue. We might revisit this issue of how to improve feedback to individual codes to coders. We will discuss in our team. Thank you.
Dr. Farad Zameen. Dr. Zaman, please unmute.
Good evening, sir. Actually, regarding the quality check, in the earlier system, they had a tab on the quality check where the ill-defined coding, R coding, the coder used to know how many R coding they have coded. So my request that you have another quality check, that is the unreasonable coding. Why don't you go for quality check? One is how many R coding and how many unreasonable coding. That will be a kind of feedback for the coder themselves.
So you want at individual level, we ask them how many R coding you have done. You provide a feedback.
Yes, sir. Not only R coding, also the unreasonable coding. Which
so we will make it as a part of dashboard. We will start providing the individual coders in the dashboard the number of R codes that they have coded and unreasonable. The only thing about unreasonable is that unreasonable is done by adjudication, and not all forms go. As you know, only about 15% forms go for adjudication. So not all forms are assessed for unreasonableness. But
still, the coder will have an idea that why so many coding are coding unreasonable.
I agree. We'll start creating mechanism by which the number of R codes and unreasonable codes are also available in the dashboard of individual coders.
Thank you, sir.
We'll work on that.
Thank you.
So next is Dr. Bhasti Anjum. Dr. Anjum, please unmute.
Yes, sir. Actually, I just wanted to know, there are a few forms where the handwriting issues are there and we don't have the option to select that and say that it's difficult to complete the coding. So if you can include that.
There is a form called illegible narrative. I think there is an option for illegible narrative, right? Am I right, Ion?
There is a option for illegible narrative.
Yeah.
Why you are coding R99? You are coding R99 because it is illegible. So either you can use that option or you can send a support mail asking to revoke that particular form.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Next is Doctor, please unmute.
Hello.
Dr. Nilesh.
Say your name.
Sir, there is one option for remarks on the second page. When we move to the review additional data, H3 is remarks box, which is just about how confident you are. So what are we supposed to write into that and how that information is being used? That I want to know.
So if I can answer that,
go ahead.
we want to, so you know that it's a Likert scale is asking you, are you very confident, not confident, confident. So, often we see this mismatch. People write R99 or something and you say very confident. So,
sir, remarks box. I am talking about the remarks box. There is
which
one
is just above that.
Yes, sir. Remarks box.
Remarks is basically an open box where, as somebody said that the house was locked, do you want them to revoke and those kind of a thing.
I could not code because the narrative was not there. The narrative only reads house lock. See, even when it is, our system problem is, even if these two words are written in the narrative, house locked, the system.
So again, just to
there is a narrative, so it went to you. But
as
you
of
can't
now,
code.
There is you have to code if you want to your batch to be uploaded. Otherwise, it will take 2 weeks to upload. So if you want to code a form, and then you have to no choice but to give some code. But then you can write in the remarks that there was no narrative or the house was locked or something like that.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
The next is Dr. Prakash B.
We'll just take 2 more questions and then we will close for the day.
Thank you very much, sir. And I request submit to have such training program at least once in a month. I request for once in a month. Majority was requesting for once in 3 months. I feel that is more useful if we repeat this type of training program and once in a month, sir. Thank you very much.
I agree with, maybe we'll have a next session in 2 months time.
At least you can give
once a month is also very tough on us. So once in 2 months is much more.
Fine, sir. Fine, sir.
And I think we need more such discussions on coding.
Yeah, that exactly.
It has to be a two-way process of interaction so that everybody learns and improves.
Exactly, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Sir,
Thank you, sir.
if I may just come in on one issue, I would just like coders, although we'll be discussing these coding challenges, issues and all, but I request coders to go through the 2 resources which are there. One is the handbook for doctors on MCCOD, which is available from the Bloomberg Health website.
No, Ion, if you want them to do it, you should be available in our website. So put a link in our website.
And on our website, a link is there, sir, to the physician coding manual.
Yeah, I know, we can put additional meanings.
So I think that can definitely, people should read that.
Can I take another question, sir?
Yeah, last question.
Dr. K. Reddy is next. Dr. Reddy, please unmute.
Sir, it is better to allot normal coding forms for adjudicators, because adjudicators are getting only adjudicated forms, so that you cannot
yeah, right now the bottleneck is in the adjudication. We have more coders. We don't have too many adjudicators, so
okay, sir. But only
we are prioritizing adjudication work to adjudicators.
Okay, sir. Process.
Yeah. But if so, it depends on we review where the backlog is, where the bottleneck is. If we see bottleneck is in adjudication, we'll give you. If the bottleneck is before adjudication, you will get allotted normal code also.
Okay. Sir.
Yeah, but Telugu is a problem where we have a Telugu language. We have a coder and form mismatch. We don't have enough coders, but we got last year in the conference we got some good numbers, so we managed.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
So while most of you did not want disincentives for
yes.
badly, which I understand also.
Yes.
We also don't want to do it. It's a step that we don't want to take it. That's why we started that. We'll make efforts so that even if we put that clause, it gets penalized. Everybody does so good work that it becomes almost a meaningless clause. So we are hoping that with further this kind of engagement, our quality will improve, and we won't need to do any penalizing of anybody for.
Sure.
So with that, I close today's session and thank everybody for joining.
Thank you.
And anybody from the panelists want to say something?
No, nothing from my side. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.